Hi Internet, I'm Joey from EDH Rec, and I am so flipping excited to tell you about my mom's new Commander deck. So about a year ago, this happened. Hi everyone, I'm Joey, and this is my mom.
Hi Internet.
And we are here to talk about your Commander decks, because you've got some.
I have two of them.
They didn't make a Tasha card though. Like how cool would it have been to build a Tasha deck?
That would have been awesome.
Cut to today, where Wizards of the Coast did actually make a Tasha Commander, Tasha the Witch Queen, and my whole family is just over the moon about it. I asked my mom if she wanted to make a video with me about her namesake Commander, but she is a little bit shy about being on camera again. So instead of making a video with my mom, I wanted to make this video for my mom. Let's talk about Tasha. Tasha the Witch Queen is all types of complex. 5 mana for 4 loyalty with 2 activated abilities. The first activation lets us draw a card and exile up to 1 instant or sorcery from each opponent's graveyard, jotting those spells down as pages in our spellbook. And the second one lets us cast one of those exiled spells for free. And it should be noted, every time we cast one of those spells, after it resolves, it will go right back to that player's graveyard, so we can retrieve it again. Oh, and as the cherry on top, every time we cast a spell we don't own, we make demon tokens. As you can expect, the very first thing that we did was freak out about how cool it was that we could make Tasha's Tasha deck, and right after that we joked around about the fact that Tasha doesn't actually interact that much with the card Tasha's Hideous Laughter, which is actually probably a good thing because my mom doesn't like that card anyway.
I'm looking at his notes and he has Tasha's, which is my name by the way, Hideous Laughter, which I hope to heck is a card.
Yes, I was going to ask you how you felt about that one.
Because my laughter is quiet. And dainty.
So I'd actually like to do something a little unusual with this video. I don't just want to say, here are all the cards to play. My mom is a teacher, and she raised me to live by that old proverb, give someone a fish and you feed them for a day, teach someone to fish and you feed them for a lifetime. And therefore, in honor of her card, I wanted to take you on a journey through what it was like to build this deck, the experiences of playing it and the lessons that were learned and the different drafts and iterations that it went through before we could finally reach a final version. Here's the story of Tasha's Tasha deck. So first I got to work searching up all the famous cards that steal stuff from opponents to capitalize on Tasha's demon summoning ability. Obviously, I started with the classics. Gonti and Xanathar are the iconic legends of the theft strategies, and I took a lot of inspiration from their EDH Rec pages to find more ideas. Siphon Insight gives us 2 bites at the apple, and King Narfi's Betrayal gives us potential cards to play while also filling graveyards for Tasha to take from too. Cunning Rhetoric, Mind's Dilation, and Chaos Wand caught my eye as well to keep stealing from the tops of libraries, especially that Mind's Dilation, which is already a card that makes a ton of value in any deck, but especially in this one when every card comes with a free demon token. Going further down the top deck pilfering, I found my way to cards like Stolen Goods, Talent of the Telepath, and Xander's Pact. I'm especially fond of Talent because 2 spells and 2 demons for 4 mana just seems really lovely if you can pull it off. This led me to a series of combative theft effects. Nightveil Spectre and Thief of Sanity are so stinking funny, and Nashi is a really exciting card. I felt encouraged to give Keru Mind Eater a go as well, and the same goes for Predator's Hour, which could be useful to poke through damage while also accruing advantage that will beget yet more demons. I think the real MVP though is Dazzling Sphinx, which is effectively a free Chaos Wand every time it strikes an opponent. I just stinkin' love it. Oh, and it hasn't come out yet, but that new Elder Brain card, what a great combative payoff. Tasha cannot wait to get her hands on it. This reminds us that, of course, the top of the library is not the only place we can pilfer from. Arvinox literally turns things upside down and steals from the bottom of decks instead. Hostage Taker and Dragon Necromancer each steal things from the battlefield in various ways. Spelljack, Keru Spellsnatcher, and Rod of Absorption also all take stuff right from the stack, again in bizarre ways. Thada Adele loves to reach right into people's decks and take their soul rings. Knowledge Exploitation goes to find a spell and casts it, and that spell will go right to the graveyard afterward, exactly where Tasha wants it. Praetor's Grasp also digs deep to find our favorite thing, though note that it doesn't have the color fixing text that so many of these other effects have. Extract Brain could get something fun from right out of someone's hand. Ashiok Nightmare Muse makes tokens and could help Tasha make fun tokens if we reach that -7 ability. Oh, and yes, Opposition Agent also loves to yoink advantages from enemies and give those cards to us instead. After that, Rexial, Mnemonic Betrayal, and Memory Plunder lift spells right out from the graveyard, and full honesty, y'all, I used to try and stuff these cards into any deck I could, but they always got budged out, so I was really excited to find a home for them here. Diluvian Primordial specifically deserves a huge shout out. Note the wording here. It casts the spell directly. This is different than some other cards that initially look similar to this effect, like Spelltwine and Flawless Forgery, but those cards exile and then copy the spells, rather than casting the spell directly, so they don't actually synergize with Tasha the way that the Diluvian does. So you may be noticing something right about now. I've talked about a lot of cards so far, and I haven't even gotten to the deck's basic necessities like card advantage or removal. I hope you're paying really close attention, because not every card that I just mentioned or showed on screen or talked about in detail actually makes it into the final deck list that you can find in the description box below. There's just too much happening, and we'll get to those things of whittling stuff down in a moment, but for now, we're still just at a starting point. We're still in the research phase, and there's a lot left to go. Those were just cards that steal things, but Tasha herself needs opponents to have cards in their graveyards for her +1 ability to do anything at all. We need mill effects in here, and big effects like Mind Grind, Consuming Aberration, and Maddening Cacophony all help Tasha get the pick of the litter. Not only that, but there are cards that synergize with the fact that Tasha herself is a Planeswalker. The Chain Veil, Rings of Brighthearth, for example, those could double some things up. A handful of Proliferate effects would be kinda nice to help her stay alive and to repeat that -3 effect a bit more often too. Spark Double gives us another Tasha, and since they both apply page counters to the cards they exile, each version of Tasha would be able to cast any of those paged cards. Settle the Score stood out as a fun removal effect to freely tick up the commander. Oh, and speaking of removal, the removal is huge for a deck like this. We of course want to pack in some of those classic removal effects, including a bunch of pinpoint spells, but also some wonderful board wipes to keep the rest of the table from going haywire. There are a lot of tricks that you can pull off with board wipes for a Planeswalker deck. For example, Nev's Disc stood out because it doesn't hit Planeswalkers and would leave Tasha alive. And that's to say nothing of the Mana Acceleration package or Card Advantage package that every deck needs. Since we have a little Proliferate in the pile, maybe we could potentially benefit from Astral Cornucopia or Everflowing Chalice to get some extra counters here and there too. Solemn Simulacrum is nice to help ramp and to chump block for our commander. Oh, and Chromatic Lantern and Felwar Stone are super important for theft decks, in case we steal any cards that have off-color activated abilities that we want to utilize later. I recommend Exotic Orchard in the mana base for the exact same reason. What's theirs is ours. And yeah, like I said, this is a lot of freaking cards. This is way more than you can fit into any 99. For my own sanity, I sorted cards not by card type, but by their function, whether they're supposed to help us steal things, help us remove stuff, help us ramp, etc. Remember, not every single card that I mentioned or that's being featured here actually makes it into the final cut. It is extremely hard to fit in a bunch of mill and a bunch of theft and enough removal and enough ramp to actually cast the cards that we steal and enough regular card advantage to help keep us from running out of fuel and enough lands to make any of that work in the first place. That all was just the process of building stuff up, but then it came time to start chiseling away. And I did this by relentlessly playtesting the deck over and over and over and over again, and goldfishing the deck over and over and over and over again. Whether it was a certain configuration of the 99 with everything else still in a maybe board pile, or if it was just a whole pile of like 140 cards pretending to be a commander deck. And anyway, here's what I learned right away. First, stealing things is a tough job. When you're facing off against an Elf Ball tribal deck, an Enchantress player, and a life gain deck, yeah, those spells don't all cooperate. The spells in those decks work in tandem with a very specific set of synergies, but don't do much in isolation. A lot of decks out there are niche strategies and therefore have niche spells, so we don't often get to steal outright good stuff powerhouses that are extremely good on their own. Second, Tasha is Very, very attackable. This was already obvious, but holy crap, she's so killable. She doesn't defend herself unless we play other stuff, and it is very hard to play her and a stolen card both on the same turn to try and make a demon token. And even beyond that, Tasha's strategy draws a lot of ire. People don't like it when you take their stuff. Tasha's strategy doesn't even need to be overtly powerful for it to be slightly irksome to everyone at the table. When player X is stealing some of your stuff, it doesn't necessarily matter to you if player Y is technically a bigger threat. It's just a teensy bit bothersome, and that makes everyone want to put a stop to it and to make Tasha disappear and knock it off. The third thing I learned is that this deck is mana hungry. When Xanathar and Arvinox and Elderbrain are tearing through stripes of cards, you want a lot of mana to play them all. Note how expensive all of these cards are too. A lot of this deck's best cards are like 7 mana. Like, a lot of them are 7 mana. A bunch of other decks out there are using some 7 mana spells to like end the game, while our deck is full of 7 drops that are kind of just beginning to get the party started. So it's important for us to be wise with how we arrange our mana acceleration. So, to adjust, here are some of the changes that I made. More defenses to keep Tasha alive so that she doesn't just automatically die. Impenetrable defenses and death touch deterrents would hopefully stave off attention so that Tasha could arrive whenever she wanted and start drawing cards even if the graveyards weren't full yet. I especially like Kaya's ghost form for Planeswalker commanders too, because it gives them a little more staying power. And I happily spruced up more and more of the pinpoint removal effects to keep Tasha safe from pesky attackers. In addition to all of that, I also majorly increased the number of ramp cards to help establish defenses more quickly, and also to get more mana so that we could actually cast all of those big thievery cards, as well as play all of the cards that they found for us. Now, as a reminder, we're not done yet. Those lessons are interesting and the changes are interesting too, but they're not the last ones. Not anywhere close. We're only on draft like number 9 of the deck or something like that. This is nowhere near the final product. It turns out there were still a lot of lessons that needed to be learned. And thus began a new round of playtesting, which actually took place on our stream, twitch.tv/EDHRecast, in games against the phenomenal Michael Kritz and friend of the show, Aaron Radney. Huge shout out to them. You can see how the decks worked on the VODs on our Twitch channel, or if you sign up on the EDHRecast Patreon, we have a few Patreon exclusive episodes and a full Patreon stream gameplay archive to check out there as well. Those test runs on the stream were, again, hugely important practice, and getting a few more games under my belt with this deck confirmed for me one very important thing. That, yeah, this Tasha deck was a whole lot harder than I thought it would be. It just brought everything back to the drawing board, because something about the deck fundamentally was not working. Anytime that I'd try to help the deck out in one specific way, it would just create a weakness in a completely different category. And anytime that I tried to shore up that weakness, it would just create a different weakness in another capacity. It was really disheartening. But mama didn't raise no fool. So when something ain't working, what do? Well, you stop trying to force the issue. You stop trying to cram everything into a specific box, and you let it breathe and you boil things down. I mean, this is a strategy game. It's a game. So let's ask stuff on that axis. What is the experience that this deck wants to have? What is the joyfulness of playing it? How do we center the deck's fun? What does this deck want to do? What is this deck's essence? To me, it came back to these 3. Memory Plunder, Diluvian Primordial, and Mnemonic Betrayal. The deck wanted to make cards like this truly shine. Pilfering from the tops of libraries and plucking cards out of people's hands is really cool, but I think I'd set off on the wrong foot when I tried to make those other effects the primary focus, and that squashed the ability for these cards to flourish. Basically, I'd tried to build Tasha like it was a Xanathar deck, when it's actually much closer to a Rexiel deck. So this is the part where I hope you've been paying attention, because we're making a lot of cuts to a lot of cards. For example, Nightveil, Keru, and Thief of Sanity look delightful, but they're tough to make work here. Nashi is hard to poke through without more dedicated ninjutsu help in the 99, and Predator's Hour requires us to already be doing well to do anything at all. Extract Brain, Praetor's Grasp, Stolen Goods, these are all clever, but they're also kind of pipe dreams. They sound great when they come with a free demon off of Tasha, but like I said before, it's hard to cast Tasha and a stolen card on the same turn. Draugr and the Rod also weren't necessarily a wow factor, and as for the opposition agent, well, it turns out my mom doesn't like that card all that much. Just turns out it feels a little too mean. All that commander-centric Planeswalker stuff was kind of a bit of frippery too. Chainveil and Rings are better for dedicated Super Friends decks than for this specific Planeswalker. Nev's Disc even proved to be more of a liability than a boon, because wiping out all of our mana rocks hurts a lot for a deck that is this mana hungry. Excessive Proliferate stuff was a shiny dream, but also just a dream. Settle the Score in particular is just so slow. And some of the defensive cards, which I thought was an epiphany moment when I added them, turns out a lot of them are fine to remove, because they inherently center Tasha as the biggest and most important card of the deck, to defend at all costs. And that's the trick. She's not. This is not a commander-centric deck. It's more of a commander-agnostic deck. Tasha herself doesn't need to be the only one in the spotlight, and her payoff doesn't need to be the deck's entire focus. Trying to build the deck that way means that we're putting all of our eggs into one basket, and we wind up not really being able to do a whole lot because we start just playing a game of preservation rather than pushing a specific plan forward. And that right there actually was the ultimate discovery. That offense is actually this deck's best defense. It takes pressure off of the commander if she's not the problem, she's one of many problems. So it was time to take these cards and make them shine. The first drafts of the deck didn't fill graveyards nearly enough. Adding in some light mill effects like Ruin Crab, Psychic Possession, and Fractured Sanity all really help set the stage little by little. Windfall and Whispering Madness offset people's plans and dump tons of cards right where we want them. And once there are full graveyards, it frankly just seems silly to only take spells out of them. A little extra reanimation gives the deck some extra punch, extra threats, and some genuine game-ending potential. And hey, Conrad really loves a deck with a lot of extra mill, don't you think? It just seems right for Tasha to enlist the help of the Joey Conrad Alter Sleeve for Mother-Son to work in tandem to take opponents down. And heck, just imagine casting a maddening cacophony with a Conrad in play. And of course, we still have room for some of our very favorite stealing standouts, and there are a few defensive and removal effects that we're really happy to have picked up along the way as we learned all of those lessons. This list here finally feels like a deck that knows how it wants to have fun with its premise. And the only way you figure out how to find what feels right is by iterating on it over and over again. And you know what? I bet there are a lot of folks out there who will come to a different conclusion about all of this. Or a lot of folks who will find themselves unimpressed with the Tasha card, bummed out that she's, quote, just another Regzeal or whatever. There are folks out there who will hear that Nightveil Spectre effects didn't make the cut and they'll think that that's absolutely ridiculous. How could we leave it out? And there are just as many folks who will think that it's absolutely ridiculous that we tried to make Nightveil Spectre effects work out in the first place. But I don't know, to all of those folks out there who are inevitably going to let me know that they hated this video and they took umbrage with the way that this deck's journey unfolded and that we're morons for not playing XYZ card, whatever. Like, yeah, I hate to break it to you, but I didn't make this video for you. I made this video for my mom. I love my mom. My mom plays Commander. Nothing anyone can say will ever affect my mood in any way. All this info is yours to do with as you wish, but I am just so ecstatic that I got to share a story about how I built a new deck for my mom. And let's be real, Tasha could have been like a 2/2 that had 0 abilities, but I still would have been over the moon about it because it's a commander with my mom's name. And that joy right there is the whole point of any of this. I hope it's useful for you to hear about the journey of deck building because, yeah, sometimes this is hard. And I hope my mom enjoyed watching me learn all of this in real time because you almost never get it right on the first try. Sometimes it takes a long time before you find what works for you. And you know what? Here's the ultimate plot twist. Over the past couple of weeks, I got to have a bunch of game nights with my folks. And it turns out that my mom doesn't actually like the Tasha strategy all that much. It's just not really her style. It's not really her jam. The Tasha strategy is all about thievery and being sneaky, and it's very graveyardy. And that's not really what sparks joy for my mom in Magic. She prefers her flying decks with the Gravitational Shift and Magus of the Moat. She prefers her Voltron deck with the Double Strike and Commander damage. That's what sparks joy for her. She's delighted that there's a commander out there that shares her name, but she decided that it would be maybe more fun for Tasha's Tasha deck to be the family Tasha deck, where anyone can play it whenever they want. that it's a memory that we all get to share with each other, that it's a game that we get to play together. And that's really rad. And by the way, Wizards of the Coast, just in case you happen to be watching, we had an absolute blast with Tasha's Tasha deck. And I think it'd be really cool if in some upcoming set you decided to make a legendary kangaroo so that we could try making Joey's Joey deck. I don't know, just a suggestion. And hey, Mom, love you bunches. Thanks for watching, everyone.